Welcome to Ward's Auto. We are talking engines at this time of year. This is, of course, the Ward's 10 Best Engines season. We have 37 engines that we are evaluating, and we're toward the end of the cycle at this point. October and November are the months when we evaluate the engines, and so we're toward the end of November, which means there's just a handful of vehicles still to come in. So we've driven a lot of vehicles, and we're going to talk a bit about about the vehicles. First, just to go over the ground rules once again, the price cap, $60,000. So that's a base price cap. So anything over $60,000, like a Corvette Z06, for instance, won't be in the competition. Also, we evaluate them among the editors here at Ward's. I have Byron, James, and Drew, plus there are 4 other editors. So then there are 8 of us who are evaluating these engines in and around Metro Detroit, and we're just driving them as any other consumer would, and we're not taking them on dynos or anything like that. Also, a very important distinction on our competition, it's all of the new engines, and it's all of the re-engineered engines, but it's not carryover engines unless they won in the previous year. So it's the 10 that won last year plus all of the new engines. So we're going to talk now first about the EVs and the hybrids that we've been driving here during the competition. We've had the BMW i3, both the range extender and the pure EV. We also had the Fiat 500e. We had the Hyundai Tucson fuel cell vehicle, which is the first time that we've had that. The Kia Soul EV, and then we had the hybrid Lexus NX, and also the Volkswagen e-Golf electric vehicle. So, any of those float your boat, gentlemen?
Well, I never thought that I would live to see the day where we would be testing fuel cell vehicles on 10 Best Engines. I mean, I've been covering fuel cells for 15 years or something like that, and to see one that they've actually leased some they're already in the marketplace, and to be testing one was a pretty big thrill for me. I mean, funny though, the car's not, seems totally ordinary, or certainly a very ordinary EV.
And that was kind of the point, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, but you look under the hood, there's nothing. It doesn't look like a spaceship under the hood, but it really is. I mean, a spaceship, a fuel cell.
It looks like your basic Tucson with some interesting paint on it, but other than that, it's your basic CUV.
Nothing scary, but underneath there's some amazing stuff going on.
And how did it drive? What do we think about the drive experience?
Well, technically, from a technological point of view, it's certainly a home run. But the one thing that I think it lacks is any sort of character. It's a bit vanilla to drive. Yeah. But it is a CUV, and how many exciting CUVs do we really drive? But very it's responsive, and it handles just about everything that you throw at it, from city driving to tooling around on the highway.
And I think that vanilla flavor that you're talking about, I think they intentionally try to do that to show what the technology is capable of, and that there is no sacrifice with that technology. If they would have gone all bat crazy with that thing and made it something weird about, that would have just alienated people right off the bat.
Well, and so many of the others were like science projects. I mean, they made all sorts of quirky noises, and then they took up all this room. And then I think the other significant thing here is this is an electric vehicle, but a big one. And so most of the EVs that we test are smaller. And also, the range is it's incredible.
The range I got was better than the display showed, so it was besting what they would told me I had available, which I found impressive, because in EVs, pure EVs, it's exactly the opposite.
And if you look down the regulatory pipeline, they're gonna start demanding more. California and the other states that follow their emissions rules are going to start demanding more fuel cell vehicles from automakers. And you're talking about it being a bigger vehicle and this being able to propel it, whereas a battery couldn't. So this opens you up. This gets you into those other sort of northeast markets where you can do all-wheel drive. You can do a larger CUV.
Yeah, but the lack of infrastructure is one thing that we talked about.
It's a huge thing.
Well, it's a huge thing, but we also said there are a few things that were built even though there was no infrastructure. Things like cell phones and telephones.
Right.
And,
can't argue with that.
And the other issue is this isn't really. I think we wondered if it was an outlier or not, but I mean, this is the first. Hyundai's clearly way out in the lead with a fuel cell vehicle, but we're going to see a lot more coming down the pike. I mean, Toyota's coming out with one next year. Then we're going to see, I think in the year after, we're going to see a Honda, and a year after we're going to see GM GM, and there's others also coming. So I mean, federal regulations and some other issues are driving. I mean, this is I think a new category really for 10 best engines. I mean, because it's just there's some new ones coming out, and they're not going away. And this isn't just just an experiment.
No, it might be the beginning of, like, what, 15 years ago when you tested the first hybrid? I mean,
Yeah.
could be the start of something like that.
So let's talk a bit about the fueling issue. Of course, the vehicle that we tested is a California spec vehicle, and in California there are somewhere like 10 fueling stations.
I don't even know if there's that many. It's probably there were 10 or 12. I don't know if there's still. I mean,
there's plans for others.
Yeah.
But the placement of those is within millions of potential consumers. So the idea is that Hyundai wanted to make this vehicle available to a lot of people who would have access to the fueling. And of course, Hyundai pays for all the fuel, so you pay $499 a month. And again, this is only in California. You can't get this vehicle anywhere else. So that kind of weighs on us in terms of our our judging.
Except there's a lot of EVs are only available in California.
Sure,
as well.
that's true. That's true. But the vehicle that came to us for testing was not a standard. You would normally fill up a 700 bar system, and the one that we had was only 350 bar, which meant that it would take half the fuel. So instead of having a range of closer to 300 miles, we were more like 140, 150 every time we had this vehicle filled up. So we drove it for 2 weeks, and I think we all enjoyed it, but the fueling was a little bit complicated. But we're willing to make allowances, given that in California the experience should be much smoother.
And when we first got it, it did have a tank. I mean, it was right up there at 265
Exactly.
miles,
Yep.
like a fully charged battery would have been.
So, speaking of interesting sounds, the BMW i3, which we have here now, this is the extended range version. We also got the all-electric version that has come in the office, but the i3 range extender makes some pretty interesting sounds.
Yeah.
It's like whoosh, 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 whoosh. It's pretty cool. And then when the range extender kicks in, which again does not turn the wheels, it's only providing juice for the battery to then drive the motor. When that kicks in, that range extender is fairly loud. I mean, it's louder than I remember it being in the Chevy Volt. So it's...
Yeah, I remember the transition. I was driving it when it transitioned. I was driving on the expressway, and
The BMW?
Yeah, and you really don't notice it on the expressway when it's doing it. But then when I came off and then stopped at a stoplight, holy cow! You hear basically what sounds like a motorcycle engine.
Or it sounds like choppers overhead.
Yeah, and you do notice the sound, but you also appreciate that it's giving you about 50 miles more range.
Yeah.
So it's definitely there's some compromises there, but it's pretty. I mean, once you get used to it, it's not. I would say it's not real off-putting.
Yeah. What I like about the i3 is the one-pedal driving, where you don't even need to touch the brake because the regenerative function is so aggressive that as you're accelerating along and you're coming up to a stoplight or a stop sign and you let off on the accelerator and it brakes automatically. You don't even have to touch the brake pedal. That takes a little getting used to, but once you are accustomed to it, you can find yourself actually kind of timing the distance that you need to come. You can figure out at what point should I let off on the accelerator so that I can cruise right up to this stoplight and not ever have to touch a brake pedal.
Well, that's a trait that EVs have, right? I mean, you electric motor style.
But it seems like most of the EVs that we're driving nowadays are becoming much more tailored to feel like
like
regular internal combustion. Like, the first hybrids that we had, they were real grabby with those regenerative. But a lot of the EVs, like the Soul EV, I drove that right after I drove the BMW, and it felt much more normal. It didn't have that real aggressive braking.
No, that reminded me of the Mini E, I think, that had, I don't even know if it had a brake pedal. It was...
You're right, it didn't.
Yeah, but it had that really aggressive slow-down regen. And I think this is because the i3 is just sort of to me, it's a whole different idea about transportation. It's not for... It's for a person who wants personal mobility but doesn't really who finds cars a necessary evil. So it's a sort of aspirational vehicle for someone who doesn't like cars. I mean, it's a whole different sort of thing going on. I think it's very interesting that BMW is exploring.
It's very quirky. It's got a quirky look, and then it's got a little quirkiness to its driving style, which I found to be really fun. Like you said, once you learned it, and to get back to the sound that it makes, that whooshing sound as you're accelerating, you really feel like this is something from NASA. Like it's really out there. And I think that's pretty cool because, going back to, just to jump back to that, the Tucson fuel cell, that was a little vanilla. But with this, with the i3, you can tell the BMW is trying to imbue a little bit of character into electrically driven powertrain.
It's letting you know that it's high tech. One thing I wanted to bounce off you guys, though, it's almost like, I was thinking it's like a reverse Volt, where a Volt has, it's a serial hybrid. You can go like 38 miles on EV charge, and then you can drive across country on the gas tank if you want it all day. With the i3, it's got a very small tank. It's got much more battery capacity. I think it'll go like 65 miles.
I think we figured it was 61 miles fully charged, and then with the tank topped off, you got like 55 miles of range. When I topped off and it was really cold, I got 47 miles of range.
Yeah, so I think BMW says it's actually ideally it's got like 150 miles of range or something like that. But it's a whole different concept where this is really a range extended electric car, where the Volt is kind of like a gas car that you can commute electrically.
Power when you need it.
And I can see people being kind of disappointed by that. Like, why would you give me such a small gas tank? Give me another 50 miles of range. Put another gallon in there. And so, but then I realized, well, what BMW is really trying to do is, and they've intended the i3 program for for a city solution. It's entirely for the mega cities, which means you're driving shorter distance, you're charging hopefully at your apartment building or at your office or at your home, wherever. You're running more on electric mode than you are, with the Volt, you can kind of fall into that mode of, well, I don't have to plug in because I got 250 miles in the tank, so that's fine. But I actually kind of understand the BMW logic there that if the whole point is to be zero emission, then you should be zero emission. Why should you even be using the gas?
And you find that in the Volt, is supposed to be an electric vehicle. Yes, it does have the range.
And that's the way most people indeed do drive it,
It is meant, people commute, fewer than 40 miles or whatever. They just happen to put a lot of extra into that thing, over-engineered it a bit, I think we've all agreed. And then you come out with the i3, and they're just saying, okay, this is an electric vehicle. You're getting 1 gallon of gas. You're getting enough gas to get you to plug in again.
And then, just to clarify, yes, there is a new Volt that's coming, but it won't be in our competition until next year because it's going to go on sale, sometime middle of next year, maybe?
Yes, I believe that's the time.
Okay. All right. So let's wrap up on some of these others. Kia Soul EV is a very practical, fun package. Fiat 500e is a very fun package. And as I tried to drive those compared to the BMW i3, I started to feel that in the i3 there's a little extra mid-range, when you're really wide open on it and you feel it really pulling hard. All of the electric vehicles will pull hard from a start.
Yes.
But I got the sense that the E3 gives you a little more pull further up into the, as your vehicle speed rises. Found that interesting. And then the Volkswagen e-Golf as well. That was another one that I found these EVs are getting pretty fun to drive, I think.
They are, except, I think in the green community, a lot of these cars are getting called compliance cars, where they're kind of...
Gotta do them.
You gotta do them, and then they use just a standard sort of platform on them. So you've got a regular car that no one really knows is an EV. They do well. I still think the Fiat 500e is a blast to drive, and the Kia Soul's really well done, a little more practical. But with the i3, the i3 is it's really putting it's almost kind of like reminds me of the Prius as a hybrid. It's letting you know this is a different vehicle. We're thinking everything's different about this.
All right, so we're going to wrap up this segment talking on EVs and hybrids, and we're going to move on to some other segments in a bit. But tune in to wardsauto.com for all these other videos that we are producing. Thanks.